Yep, you saw that right. A new Engineers game is on its way. We've been to space, we've had a brief holiday in the medieval world, and now the developers Keen Software are, well, keen to head into a new era. Back in time, further than we've ever been before, to ancient Rome. It sounds kind of cool, right? So why are fans angry about it? On the 17th of June 2021, the trademark Roman Engineers was registered with the EU IP database. Registered by none other than Keen Software House. It looks to be our first hint at what's next in their franchise. For anybody that is unaware or living under a rock, Keen Software released Space Engineers back into early access of 2013. An incredibly successful and beloved sandbox open world, scavenging for resources, constructing ships to fully automated bases, heading out to find AI combatants to take out and raid their ships, or even landing from planet to planet, building bases and taking any resources needed to expand your intergalactic empire. And yes, it was and it still is an incredible game. Even now, with its latest weaponry update that's had a massive focus on warfare, the developers are still hard at work trying to make it the best thing it could possibly be. Then, in 2015, Keen released Medieval Engineers, now back in the past, building castles, going to war, a full combat system, and siege engines with amazing building destruction. Once again, a great success and people loved it, at least for a while. You see, even I, at first, was incredibly excited about the prospect of a new Engineers game in ancient Rome. Many of my favorite games are set within this period. Rome Total War, Rome 2 Total War, after about 5 years, Age of Empires 1. I just love this period, even to the point when it comes to games like Rise Son of Rome, something that had major issues, but still for me was enjoyable just because of the setting it thrust itself into. Yes, I am a big biased history nerd, but the point still stands that Keen Software surely had a hit game on its way. But this isn't the full story. Whilst I think in any other situation, most people would jump at this new title. If Keen Software as a development company's history only included Space Engineers as a title. But sadly it doesn't. That abandoned child has to be taken into account. And by that, I mean Medieval Engineers. I did a full rundown of exactly what went wrong with that game a few days back now, the ins and outs of its inception, and the main reasons behind the developers leaving it for another, more successful child. The favorite, you could call it. And I think them leaving Medieval Engineers to focus on Space Engineers just left a bad taste in many fans' mouths. And it all comes back to that story. The medieval game that had so much potential, so many fans were all over it, but it was left pretty much to rot for, well, kind of understandable reasons at the time, I guess, because Keen went to focus on Space Engineers as of course it was the more successful and profitable title, and for a company that isn't exactly AAA sized, of course resources are limited. So whilst it was disappointing, I think a lot of people understood. But now, to be working on another title is almost hypocritical in some people's eyes. There's a bit of an air of, oh well, the Medieval Engineers game didn't quite work, so let's just leave that one and start a new project, and this time it will be different, which I think many fans are starting to become wise to now and potentially not putting up with it. But the story doesn't end there, no. Not only is the fact that their previous go at this historical variant on their Space Engineers game failed, but more importantly, it was about the way it failed. It wasn't just a slow decline, it was a complete shunning of the title. The last update came back in 2019, then we heard nothing for over a year. Complete radio silence from the devs until they finally came back and just said, look, we're just going to release Medieval Engineers, we're not going to update it or fix any of the big issues that are plaguing it, let's just shove it out into the world and hope that no one would notice. And because of all of this, the community are very much making their voices heard. The Space Engineers forums are now slating this game, saying they're not interested in a new title because of the history of Keen Software, which honestly is kind of fair enough. Space Engineers is still widely loved and has such a loyal and hardcore fan base, and it does deserve that. It is a fantastic game, but honestly, as developers, Keen have a lot of proving themselves to do in order for people to get back on board with their next foray. I doubt the game's going to come out anytime soon. I doubt we're even going to get an official announcement in the near future about Roman Engineers, but boy, you can bet when we do, people are definitely going to be skeptical. You may think after everything I've said in this video that I'm not excited to hear anything more about it, or even have a precognition that Roman Engineers is going to be a bad game. But in fact, it's kind of the opposite. Whilst like many, I am skeptical and kind of annoyed that Keen are moving on without any more thought for Medieval Engineers, I still want it to be good. I want Keen to do well and to make a title that everybody loves. I mean, it's a win-win. Keen redeem themselves and build their franchise and manpower, and fans get a great game. And an engineering game set in ancient Rome has so many possibilities. They started to focus on combat within medieval engineers. And yes, to say it was rudimentary is a bit of an understatement, but it was there. If that was refined a bit more, along with the AI and NPC helpers and even soldiers, Roman engineers could have some mighty potential. Building your own small towns, large cities with colosseums, vendors on the cobbled streets, barracks and armies that could be trained to fight against other cities on your borders. There's so much more to explore. And in a utopian world, the game could be like that. But there's still a lot of work to be done. Not just literally, but metaphorically on Keen Software's side. They need to get people back on board, because if they really want to expand their franchise, they need players to actually be excited for what's next. Because whether you like it or not, Roman Engineers as a game is coming.